So, I'll be honest, this episode started off a little rough, as to me, it didn't really start to pick up steam until the Raizo versus Fukuro Kujo part, and it's mainly because of the same problem I mentioned last week, so I won't retread my thoughts here, but needless to say, the first chunk of the episode is a little slow in the pacing department, although I will say I'm glad they at least moved forward with the whole Momonosuke stuff now. Like all the stuff you saw with from Luffy and Shinobu, the Heart Pirates, all that. Yeah, you saw it right. Momonosuke is basically now a fully grown adult, and he and Luffy are headed to fight Kaido now. So I'm glad we finally moved past that stuff. I will also say, with news of Black Maria's defeat, I do like how he got set up that, yeah, CP0 is about to enter the fray personally, which, depending on one's perspective, leads to a very interesting moment when the Luffy versus Kaido fight picks back up again. That I remember there being a lot of split opinions, to say the least, on that moment. So it's going to be interesting to see what people think about it in the anime. Like, I don't think there's going to be too many differing opinions there, but yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. And yeah, as far as Fukuro Kujo himself, I will say this was always kind of one of those fights that just existed off to the side of everything else. But I will also say something about the anime to mention with this fight is whether it's the voice acting or atmosphere. The anime really has me a bit more invested in this fight than I was in the manga, and I think part of that also has to do with my obvious respect for Raizo and how his loyalty is forever placed upon the Kozuki family, but also there is something kind of fascinating about Raizo's outburst to Fukuro Kujo, about him willing to serve any lord, and Fukuro Kujo just smiling at the insinuation. Like, it's one of those moments where I do oddly respect Fukuro Kujo for sticking to his ideals, however fucked up they may be. I know, that sounds weird, but I like how the whole fight in itself is just a battle, even though it's very physical, it is still a battle of ideals. Like, it's Raizo saying it's whichever ideal is ultimately going to win out in the end. However fucked up Fukuro Kujo's ideas may be. Also, I gotta mention before I forget, but a personal highlight for me of the episode was seeing Nekomamushi absolutely bitch swipe Perospero, which thankfully I believe is, like, this is setting up for, like, Perospero's final moment in the arc, and yeah, you have no idea how many times I put that moment on repeat. It was so satisfying, like, seeing Perospero just get bitch swiped by Nekomamushi. That was like, thank you, Nekomamushi, thank you, I've been waiting for this forever, thank you. All that aside, though, obviously the big prime fight of the episode to talk about is Kid versus Big Mom, which is also happening concurrently alongside Killer versus Hawkins. And honestly, just the little bits and pieces of the fight that we got here in this episode were enough to already pump adrenaline into me. Like, this is, again, I've mentioned before, this is only just the beginning of how chaotic the fight with Big Mom gets, and pacing be damned. It's only going to get better from here. Like, I said it before, I'll say it again. Like, the Big Mom versus Kaido fight, the Big Mom versus Law and Kid fight is one of my personal favorites in the series, in Wano, and maybe the series as a whole, just for how it really plays upon the idea of forcing Law and Kid to really work together in order to take on Big Mom. Like, Big Mom, for whatever jokes we crack about her, she is still a Yonko, and I feel the fight in itself, the fact that Law and Kid were forced to work together to fight her to begin with, I think does showcase that, yeah, she is a threat. And I feel that's something that's showcased better than in, like, the Kaido fight, but whatever, it is what it is. Because I find this, but it's, and like, yeah, I just think this is going to be the best fight. Like, the best things during, and although the focus of this fight is, in this episode, was more focused on Law, trust me when I say Law is about to pop off. And any anime only is watching this review, Law is about to pop off majorly beyond this point. But even beyond that, another technical technical part I noticed about this episode is that although we would obviously prefer a full-on hand-drawn fight, I think the animators are getting a little bit better each time at blending the CG of Kid's metal arm. Like, I don't know, like, I don't know if it's just me, but it felt like it even though it was obviously CG, it felt still blended more into the backdrop of the fight itself. Of course, even more than that, of course, even beyond like Law and Kid versus Big Mom, we also concurrently to that we also have the fight going on between Hawkins and Killer. And the thing about the fight, this fight with Hawkins has got me both. That really is kind of interesting is that Hawkins in a lot of ways has got both Kid and Killer dead to rights. Like, the only way Killer can defeat Hawkins right now is by destroying the straw doll linked to Kid's life. And to me, this is just another example of how fucked in the head right now Hawkins really is. Like, he don't get me wrong, he's a pirate, so obviously he's going to resort to dirty tricks. But this moment, that moment we saw in this episode, it really shows that for how far Hawkins has fallen. Like, how far he will go to the point where, for as much as Kid has gained a reputation for being crazy and cruel in his methods, Hawkins is downright psychotic at this point. Like you can tell that the experience of coming face to face with Kaido for the first time, it changed his perception majorly. If he's going this hard on proving just how much of a psycho he is now. And yeah, after that though, the rest of the episode cuts back to Sanji taking on King and Queen, and I'd have to look back on this fight again in the manga, but I think the anime did add quite a bit more to this fight to show that for as tactical as Sanji tried to be in taking them both on, ultimately he couldn't do it, and it's through that and seeing their rampage shortly after Sanji getting knocked down that, in my opinion, builds them up more as a threat. Like, don't get me wrong, Kid and Queen have always been threats in this arc, but from what I remember of reading the manga, their threat was you could say in some ways self-contained, their individual fights and moments, but moments like seeing King and Queen go on an absolute rampage, I feel and just getting more context of said rampage, I feel do more to build them up as like real genuine threats that have earned their place among Kaido's elite, and just how it shows their power in itself feels like something to be afraid of, whereas in the anime, while there were moments like that, I didn't feel as much when Sanji and Zoro fight them. So it feels like the added stuff is keeping the level of threat they pose consistent, like pretty much leading up to the point where we are going to get those big like individual fights between Sanji and Queen versus Zoro and King. And which, yeah, talking about Zoro, obviously the episode ends with King looming menacingly over Miyagi carrying the injured Zoro, which, yeah, again, we know where it's going from here, but again, I like how the whole back half of this episode felt like it was constantly building about how ruthless and King and Queen are, to the point where, yeah, I almost did feel genuinely scared for Zoro. But, and yeah, as a whole, it was honestly a really great episode overall. The only thing that was a slight burn on my excitement, I guess, was learning that through the preview of next week's episode, we're basically going to get a recap of every fight we've had thus far, and yeah, I'm not going to be reviewing that one, guys. Like, anytime there's like recap or it's a special or something, I don't bother reviewing those. I just like to review the actual episodes themselves. But yeah, guys, that's all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. I'm on Twitter, Analyst Crunchyroll. Be sure to notification bell. Hit the subscribe button and just hit the run, guys. Dark Knight of Anime, signing off. Later, everyone.